Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this Refugee Education Australia Lunch and Learn session. It's a great pleasure to be able to work with our wonderful colleagues, our kind of uh, our genetics, I think, our genetic organization, because we began out of a partnership with RCOA way back when, about 10 years ago. This is a session that has been requested, so it's by popular request to get a bit more information about educational entitlements according to visas, protection visas specifically. And just to reiterate that this is specifically for people who are already in Australia and on a form of protection visa or who might have a refugee-like experience. It is not specifically for people who are outside of Australia. If that meets your circumstances, then please do join us and listen, but we won't be answering questions about visas outside or visa pathways in this session. I'm going to hand over to our wonderful colleague Shaheen. Really wonderful. It's a very busy week for RCOA. There's a big Department of Home Affairs mission due today, actually. So we're really lucky to have Shaheen join us today. And Shaheen is going to acknowledge country. We're going to record the first half of this session, and then we'll hand over to Shaheen for some conversation. Over to you, Shaheen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally, and welcome everyone. Fantastic to see you all today for this webinar. Um, I'm from the Refugee Council, as Sally mentioned, and I'll just begin by giving our acknowledgement to country. So we have our own organisational acknowledgement. So we pay our respects to the traditional custodians of the lands we now call home, the elders past and present. We work towards a more inclusive future with fair and humane policies for those seeking sanctuary. We remain committed to working alongside First Nations people for the achievement of a fully reconciled Australia. So yes, and I am on Daru country, so I'd like to acknowledge elders past and present, and feel free to acknowledge where you're present today on the chat as well. So yeah, I might get started now, and yeah, the topic of today's webinar is understanding education access for people seeking asylum and refugees studying at university. And I'll just give a brief overview of some of the different visas that people may be on and some of the entitlements and restrictions on those visas. So yeah, for people seeking asylum and for people on a bridging visa, people can study provided that they do not have a condition on their visa prohibiting study. So those conditions are usually on the visa for applicants and also for universities to see. There's bridging visas A, B, C, D, and E, and bridging E tends to be the more restrictive visa, which usually doesn't have work or study rights. And for if you are studying and yeah, you're likely to be ineligible. Oh, sorry, before I go into that, yeah, so if you have study rights, people cannot access Commonwealth support and must pay the international fees. So for people on bridging visas with study rights, they can't access Commonwealth support and must pay international fees. Um, and if you are studying, you're likely to be ineligible for support through the Status Resolution Support Service. So the SRSS program is a federally funded program for people seeking asylum. The threshold in order to get into that program is very high, and that program was developed to provide casework support and some income support for people seeking asylum in really challenging circumstances. So the threshold, as I said, is quite high for that. People have to demonstrate that they're unable to work and have significant physical or mental health condition and able to provide medical evidence to the department to demonstrate that. People in detention, including community detention, can't study as they don't have a visa. However, universities may be able to audit the course or attend without doing assignments or receiving the actual degree or the award. So for people on a temporary protection visa, TPV, which is a 3-year visa, or the SHEV, which is the Safe Haven Enterprise visa, they can study and will have study rights, but they won't be able to access Commonwealth support and must pay international fees. If they are studying full time, they're likely to be ineligible for Centrelink benefits, unless it's approved by the job service provider, or their course cannot be more than 12 months, or the course must be vocational or clearly enhance their immediate employment. Um, this particular people on this particular visa, many of them have now transitioned to a resolution of status visa. So in 2023, the Australian government committed to ending TPV and chefs and granting the permanent ROS visa. So there's approximately 20,000 people now who were previously on TPV and chefs who have been granted the resolution of status visa. There's probably around 1,000 that are still on the TPV and Chev visas. And it's also been, the ROS visa has also been offered to Ukrainian nationals who were granted a temporary humanitarian visa, the subclass 786, in 2022. So that resolution of status visa has been offered to them. And with this visa, with the ROS visa, it's a permanent visa and you can access help and Commonwealth support places, as well as have full access to Centrelink on par with citizens, including Austudy. Now, the humanitarian stay temporary subclass 449 is a transitory, more operates more as a transitory visa. So people who had fled Afghanistan after the fall of the Taliban. Many of them were given a 449, and it was called like an emergency evacuation visa. And people from Gaza recently were given a 449, but that's more of a transitory visa, and then it goes straight into the humanitarian concern 786 visa. So this 786 visa has no access to Commonwealth supported place, no access to higher education loan program, and it's also treated as international students who must pay international fees. So again, it has that study rights attached to it, but they have to, yeah, there's no access to those government entitlements. And again, if you are studying full time, you are likely to be ineligible for the Centrelink benefits. Yeah, other supports which may affect your income. And again, this is probably best because Centrelink may be updating their policies and procedures. But if you're receiving SRSS, or Centrelink benefits, some support from universities may be considered as part of your income and reduce your support. Scholarships, fee waivers will not affect your income support. Free board and lodging may reduce your income. Other supports such as laptops, payment of bills, or other stipends may reduce support payments. Um, but as noted in the previous slides, most people studying will not be eligible for SRSS or Centrelink because they're deemed to be fit to be able to work and support themselves. Now, in terms of the permanent refugee visas or the humanitarian visas, so there's the 200, 201, 202, and 204. These are the special humanitarian visas, the women at risk visa, the emergency rescue visa, and these visas all have full access to the Commonwealth support places, full access to help, and full entitlements to Centrelink, including Oz studies. So those are the visas that people overseas are applying for. And the 866 visa is when someone, for example, has arrived here on a visitor's visa, tourist visa, student visa, and has decided to apply for onshore protection for onshore protection visa, and that's the 866 visa. And again, if that is granted, they'll get those entitlements. Yeah, so some of the ongoing areas of advocacy that RCOA and Refugee Education Australia have been collaborating on is ongoing lobbying for people seeking asylum and refugees to have access to a basic safety net. It's been a core part of our work, and that includes having access to income, study rights, and student supports on par with other Australians. And I'm happy to answer some more questions about what we're doing in regards to that. Also increasing access to complementary pathways. So Australia has a dedicated humanitarian program and intake, which is at 20,000. The government has committed to trying to increase that to 27,000, including 10,000 places for complementary pathways. And the complementary pathways is in addition to that humanitarian program that has different avenues where people who are seeking protection can come through. It can include labour mobility pathways, the student settlement pathway, which was recently introduced as a pilot in 2024. Yep, so great work to Sally and the team for getting that across, and that's implemented by the by Skill Path. And I think Sally was 30 people initially, or was it lower than that? Okay, and
20 this year, but we're
20,
hoping for
20 this year.
50 next year, and then we're hoping for 100 the year after. So we've got
Yeah.
big ambitions.
Yeah, and yeah, it's quite a lot of work to get these pilots underway, hence why the numbers are low, but we're advocating for these pilots to become permanent. And there's also the community support program. So there's different pathways there, and also advocating for faster and fairer and better review systems. So people who are seeking protection in Australia have to often go through prolonged visa processing. So the initial process will be the department will have a look at the visa application, and that may take a few years. And then if it's refused, it will go to the tribunal, and then it might take a while for that to process. And if that's refused, people can go to judicial review. And if they're refused at the court stage, people can apply for ministerial intervention. So all up, it can take almost a decade to get a decision. So the government recently abolished the AAT and has established the ART, which is the Administrative Review Tribunal, in the hope that they can have faster visa processing and have recruited more staff to be able to coordinate that. Also coordinating with education advocacy groups on national campaigns and workshops such as today. And I know Sally's been doing a lot of work with the Refugee Education Australia as well in terms of working with universities and advocating for more scholarship programs. And sector advocacy, yeah, just lobbying internally for funds and supports for students, provision of fee waiver scholarships, bursaries, travel cards, and computers as well. So yeah, happy to answer any questions relating to that, but also wanted to just say that if people have more in-depth questions about visas, because it does get quite complex, there are community legal centres um, in most of the states that provide free legal support to people seeking asylum and refugees. We have RACS in Sydney, and there's Rails in Queensland, and also Refugee Legal in Victoria that can provide advice on visas as well.
Thank you, Shaheen. In this initial recorded part of today's webinar, does anyone have any general questions about anything that Shaheen's just mentioned? Any questions relating to any of the nuance between those visas? If not, I'm going to stop recording and then we'll go into the next part of the webinar. Please, if you can put your hand up or pop something in the chat. Sarah has put something in the chat. that articulates the goals. Yeah, it's our intention as well from today's session to create some resources so we can put together a list of those legal centres that Shaheen just mentioned. We'll also be compiling, for example, lists of open days and other resources to help, but we'll also provide an overview, just a quick one-pager of all of those visas and the entitlements so that you've got something on hand. You can also have a look at the Deakin Create website because they have a more in-depth resource that you might want to have a look at, and we can circulate that afterwards. Any burning questions?
Can I ask a quick question?
Mm.
I'm Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Thank you for the session today. It's been very informative so far. I just wanted to ask, is there a document somewhere that has a list of the visas and the entitlements where it's nice and clear so we can share with some of our high school teachers that could be handy for them just so they can give the right information to our students, especially those going off to uni?
Yeah, Sarah, we'll have a version of that, like a quick one-pager that we can send you by the end of this week. We'll circulate it amongst everyone who registered and we'll pop it on our website as well. As I said, there is a longer form version that Deakin Create. That's the Centre for Refugee Employment, Advocacy, Training and Education, have a much longer version as well. But yeah, we can see a real need for this. And we said that we would take the heavy lift off RCOA, that we would listen to Shaheen today and then just translate that into a one-pager. So yeah, good question. And we're working on it. Any other questions? In which case, don't leave. I'm just going to stop recording.